All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Wheel of Time Day, we've got Path of Daggers. I take the cover off, but the cover will always be behind me from now on when we have a book, so I
And
don't ruin them.
and no hat because we have no Matt in this whole book,
I
and
was
it
trying to look ahead and
makes
I
me
couldn't find
sad.
any Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is the one. There's no Matt, and a lot of fans, because of how it ended, because of how Crown of Swords ended, the fans were, "Where the heck is Matt? What's going on?" And Jordan just said, "He had a wall fall on him. He's just recovering the whole time. He's not doing anything interesting."
Well,
But
I'm sure Dylan can make recovery interesting.
yeah, I feel like he could have thrown in a couple of pages in the prologue just to say that in the book, because once again we have a prologue where uh, things happen that then don't come to fruition for quite some time. Um,
So yeah, one of those where any in-depth discussion will be in spoiler
yep.
territory. Yeah.
I will say right off the bat, this is one of those few storylines in the series that was kind of a letdown for me. We've talked ad nauseum about Egwene and Gawain's storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Went this is another one of those. When you first start reading this prologue and it's, who are these people? Oh, it's the Borderlanders and they're up to something. It's
Mm-hmm.
all of the monarchs of the Borderlanders. Um,
And if you did New Spring with us, we didn't talk about it, but you got a small glimpse of who Atheniel was.
mhm.
Atheniel, yeah.
Yeah. Um, the thing I do like about this section of the prologue is, as always, the world building that you, very briefly you get to see, because all we've really seen is Shinar, and then through Fail and Bashir, a little bit of Saldea. Um, New Spring gave us a little bit of whatchamacallit. My brain is dying on me.
Candor.
What's the name of that country?
Candor.
Andor. Uh, uh, Yeah, so you get a little bit of all of them and how they're similar but different. Um, but then this storyline is something of a letdown. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Of okay, what is going on here? It doesn't seem to be doing anything. Um, but at least you have some interesting
You just run
personalities
by.
here. Um, all right, so not much to say on that except it's nifty. Um,
Well, the most important thing is you get the idea that yeah, they're talking about how quiet the blight is right now. But even as quiet as it is, they have to have felt something was so important that they would still leave their posts all at once. I mean, not just we'll send emissaries or how about, Candor go Candor this time and try to make contact and use your weight. And if that fails, then we'll send this one. And maybe with the barrage, it will get through. No, everybody just left at once.
Mhm. Um, the other thing I do like Tenobia, because we've heard a fair bit about her because of Bashir and Fail, and she's exactly who you were expecting with her rash to the point of a little bit crazy. Um, she is definitely one of those girls that you would say, "Oh no, don't date her. She's got crazy eyes."
Well, no, it depends on where she is on the hot craziness scale. I need to bring the
That's
scale up
true.
now.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get into even more precarious potential spoiler territory, but I'm gonna try not to get too distracted because I'm a Varen simp. She's easily one of my favorite more minor characters. Um, especially the more I reread, knowing her whole arc.
Yeah, we
Also,
got
no.
to we got to get on the hot crazy matrix. So, going by this chapter, we'll put her probably about an 8 for crazy. So if she's at least an 8 hot, she's right on the border of danger zone and date zone. I mean, she's definitely not wifey material. So and definitely not unicorn, and anything less than a 4 is not female, so that's tranny.
Are we allowed to say that?
Actually, it goes right into that narrative, their narrative, because remember, by definition, they're the actual definition is body dysmorphia, so they're probably already by definition above a 4. Though you're supposed to use the C word, you in just you need a probably a person to go see and talk to. They're probably above a 4.
I'm gonna have to find that picture and save it just for funsies. All
I,
right.
I know I have it on my phone somewhere, but I wanted to get it real quick for us.
Um, Varen is up to something, and it it took me a while to um really figure this out because she is one of the best kept secrets until the end of the series. I mean, pretty much the very end. And then all of these things just kind of fall together. Um, and you go, "Oh, that's why that, and that's why that, and that's why that." Um,
We'll pick up more on that in the spoilers, because I have a comment that in that line, but it would be spoiler.
I do like, let's see. Much like what we spent a lot of time in New Spring talking about is seeing the thought process is you know because you've already met these characters that Sawan and Moraine are very cunning and very intelligent and great players of the game. But then Jordan's ability to actually write that and make it believable and in depth and intriguing. Um,
Wait. Say that statement again.
it
All these
to
people are the great players of the game.
Moraine and Sawan.
Okay.
So
That's what I missed while I was writing.
yeah,
Okay.
we
I was about to say is the Borderlanders that we're supposed to
no,
think
we've
they
moved on
have
to
no
Varen.
nonsense. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
So um we've only gotten I think one or two small POVs from Varen before, or is this the first one? I think we've gotten one or two previously. Um, but this is a pretty in-depth point of view of hers. Um, I like how cagey he is with his words, so you can't tell for sure if she's good or bad or somewhere in between or what the heck is she up to. Um, but the most interesting thing to me is how close but far away she is to figuring the Aiel out.
Mm-hmm.
In large part because she seems to be the only one trying to, other than Egwene, who kind of had to because she was an apprentice. So,
But
which,
Egwene had very little imprinting on her mind at that point. She had the stories when she was a kid,
mhm,
but realistically, actually going to see them was the big jump there. There's really nothing of her education in the tower on the subject or anything else, because she really didn't have much education in the tower. She came in, they raised her
yeah,
to accepted. She was shipped off by Leandrin. She got back. They realized how powerful she was, but also Swan just sent her right back out. So
yeah.
it got maybe months of time in the tower, realistically.
Mhm. So
And most of
page,
that was doing pots and pans.
yep. So page 14, um, she's going through this thought process
Are
of,
you in the soft cover?
oh yeah, I'm in the
Oh, okay,
I'm in the
okay.
paperback. All right, so page 14 in the paperback, it's the
First couple words of the paragraph, and we'll sync up.
she suppressed a sigh. So this is the second section of the prologue, Varen's section. And
Okay, that's 26 in the hardback. If you're
okay, so she she notices one of the black robe Datsang uh being worked near to death, and she goes through this fun little thought process of um was was I supposed to see that? And to her, it makes no logical sense that she wasn't, because even with Randall Thor theoretically somewhere in the city, you can only push Tavarin so far. That's too much of a coincidence. So she starts going through um uh why. So whatever the reasons or need, and for another, it was obvious that a fair number of the wise ones wanted what? For her to know that being Aes Sedai counted for nothing here? Ridiculous. That had been made abundantly clear days ago. Perhaps that she could be put into a black robe too? For the time, she thought she was safe from that at least, but the wise ones hid a number of secrets she had yet to puzzle out. The smallest of them, how their hierarchy worked. Very much the smallest, yet life in a whole skin lay wrapped inside that one. Women who gave commands sometimes took them from the very woman they had been commanding earlier, and then later it was turned about again, all without rhyme or reason that she could see. No one ever ordered Cerelia, though, and in that might lie safety, of a sort. Um, I like that she has puzzled out a fair bit, but their culture is still so alien. She can't wrap her head around how does this hierarchy work. Um, and I think you've talked about this a bit, is that it's because it's not a hierarchy in kind of the Western sense of the word, in the way we think about it, because it's more fluid than that. It's more circumstantial, I think, is what I get from what we saw at the end of Lord of Chaos, when they were going to Dumai's Well, and the maidens and then the wise ones kind of had to figure out the pecking order, and it seemed more circumstantial to me as how the Aiel work.
Well, it's almost like they get together and communally try to decide something, but when there's an impasse, then there is a hierarchy.
Mm.
Where it's like they all get in the sweat tent, all the wise ones, and they discuss the situation, and whoever has an idea brings it forward.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's kind of a deadlock between ideas, then someone like Cerelia takes over because she's just the most commanding presence. Or
I think the other big difference here is that you have kind of a Western civilization, Western European American ethic on uh, uh, on the Randland side, and
I thought it
and
was Australian, Aboriginal, and
oh, the Aiel are, but no, I mean the Randland side of things.
I
They
was
they
going to the
are.
show.
Oh God. Anyway, so that is very much your kind of classic feudal, late Middle Ages kind of government and idea. And you get this a lot in Shadow Rising, as Aviendha is trying to teach Rand how things work. That you can talk even to a clan chief in a way that you never would even a minor noble on the other side of the mountains, because with the Aiel, it's all about honor and respect. And you can be confrontational and still respectful. You can be confrontational and still, you know, be mindful of your honor and the persons you're talking to, their honor as well. But on the other side of the mountains, it's a much more deferential society. And there's a huge chasm there. And I think if you grow up in this idea of, well, we got it doubly so with Varen.
It's an aristocracy versus a meritocracy, is
Mm-hmm.
what it is.
And doubly so with Varen, as we saw in New Spring, with how convoluted and rigid the Aes Sedai hierarchy is. Of you measure through power, and the more powerful someone is, the more you defer to them. Period. The end. So this is going to be something that's going to be more difficult for Varen to
Unless
tease
they had
out because it's
certain
so different.
positions, because there was
Yes.
that little nuance where she was a sitter
Yes.
or she was a da da da. Yeah.
Yes. And then also there is some circumstantial bit there where you have like an embassy or a specific mission or whatever. Um,
And
okay.
realistically, at least from the blue standpoint in New Spring, you realize that because you would first think, well, why aren't the sitters just as strong as two in the Aja, right? But they're like, no, we actually force you to be that if that's your strength. If your
Hmm.
strength is the politics, then you're going to be a sitter,
Yeah.
like it or not. And it doesn't tell you how the other ones work, but like I could see the reds, the strongest ones being the sitters, but or the greens. The greens would be a great example. The strongest would probably be the sitters because they're all about just blowing shit up, right? But yeah, sorry if I derailed us there.
Nope. Okay, so um she's questioning the tower Aes Sedai who have been taken prisoner, and of course sneaky shifty little Varen is using what very much appears to be compulsion on them, which is supposed to be a no-no. But we also saw, if you were reading this in order when they came out, you would have seen that Moiraine does something very close to compulsion. That is a secret weave of the blue. When she uh, kind of quasi compels the skeevy innkeeper to drink the roofie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we already know that there's forbidden and then there's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And because even Moiraine knows of another forbidden weave for sure, and we've seen her use it, Balefire. Because it's the only way to kill Darkhounds. So we know she knows at least one, and she uses it. So that
Well,
makes the
is it
tower law a
truly
little
the only way
fuzzy.
to kill Darkhounds?
Um, she thinks it is. That's what she
Well,
says.
because she's smart enough for this. It wouldn't make any sense that something that even the Forsaken forbade would be something that the light
Yeah.
would forbid if there was an enemy that can only be killed by it. It would be can't use this, excepting in the case of Darkhounds. It's there's got to be another no, because I think Lan makes a comment about how or no, it was a Perrin one, Perrin with the wolves,
Mm.
and he talked about I think it was Hopper talking about dozens of wolves would go down to take down one shadow brother or
Yes,
something,
yes.
but they could still do it. So if Wolf Teeth can do it, it can happen.
Um, where is it? Okay. The other thing that jumps out at me that I really like here is where is it? Where one of the wise ones, I believe it was Cerelia, um, she's thinking about how the day before had suddenly come up out of nowhere and say and want to know what shames wetlanders the most. And
Running around naked.
and which of course is bizarre to the Aiel because to them there's nothing inherently sexual about nudity. And they do
Well,
it all the
it
time.
depends on the situation, because remember
Yes,
Aviendha.
yes.
I did not want you to see me, or
I
want
did
you to
not
think
mean
mean for
see
you to
me.
see me this way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So the other Aes Sedai with Varen, um, Varuna and the other one, they were just flabbergasted. They had no idea what she meant or why she was asking. But again, shifty little clever Varen kind of knows what's going on here because she's actually paying attention. As she says, as she thinks that there are too many things that Aes Sedai just don't want to see because it's too uncomfortable. Um, so they've been staying away from the camps. They've been staying away from the tower Aes Sedai that were declared Datsang. And so they have no clue what's going on. And meanwhile, Varen wrote a list for Cerelia that she's going to hand over the next time they're alone. Which is very interesting. But also because since you're seeing it from her point of view, there's absolutely nothing malicious about it. It's because she knows what's going on. And she's trying to help in her own way for her own reasons. It's not just because those dirty Tower Aes Sedai need to be taught a lesson. It's no, she's trying to do something here. You can tell she's trying to nudge the Tower Aes Sedai into swearing fealty to Rand. You can pick that up through this section, but you have absolutely no idea why, which is what I love. It's even in her own mind, she's being cagey about why she's doing this. All right. And where's the next section for uh there's also something potentially very spoilery there that I want to skip over with Katrin Aludrin escaping. Uh and Varen freaks out. And I remind me about that in spoilers because I'm not sure if we know something that we know later yet.
Veteran.
Aludin. Oh, yes. And then the last section of the prologue is Moridin.
And that starts on page 42 in the hardcover, if anybody's following.
Yeah, so page 33. And um I believe this is the first point of view where we know for sure that it's him. So the Watcher that's watching Samael and Randall in the fan cloth, that has the funky black flecks across his eye. It's a safe bet. Even at that time, it's okay, that's got to be Moridin just by process of elimination. But I think this is the first point of view we get from him where we know for sure that it's him, and we actually get to see his thoughts. And I think it becomes it was a safe bet who he was when he first shows up, because we know how reincarnation works, and we know that the Dark One isn't going to waste a tool as valuable as one of the Forsakens. So, but I think this is intentionally the strongest clue that Jordan has given so far about, okay, you should know who this is now, because of how contemplative and philosophical he is, but also this barely controlled rage and hatred that's kind of simmering below this facade of intellect. You also get the weirdness of the Fisher King, which I can't ever remember. Do you know the stories of that? It's one of the inspirations for Rand. And
Yeah,
I know
I would have to review that. Yeah.
because there's, as I recall, there are a number of myths and stories, and I think some of them tie in with Arthurian legend, but I don't think all of them do. So I think he's one of those weird figures that kind of different cultures kind of took on and told their own stories with it. So it's kind of a bizarre folk tale, folk character.
Well, when you see glimpses of that in the story of Job, to some degree, it's kind of loose parallel, but there is some of that as well, which will give you some insight in how Rand's next few books are going to be.
Oh no. Okay, and then we get to chapter 1, To Keep the Bargain, which I had even forgotten how this book started. And it starts with kind of going backwards a little bit from when we left Matt in Crown of Swords to see what the girls are doing. So this is right after Matt has left, and we know it's right after because Nyneave is in a tizzy of, how dare you, Lan? You don't. How dare you pledge to take care of me? I don't need to be taken care of. But then Lan is the manliest man in the series, and kind of puts her in her place, but not in necessarily a purposeful way, just by being his manly self. Of, no, this is what I do. You are Aes Sedai. I am a warder. I take care of you. That's my duty. Where is it? So on page 41 of the paperback, Besides, caring for you is my heart's desire, Nynaeve. You can ask or demand anything of me, but never to let you die without trying to save you. The day you die, I die. That last he had not said before, not in Aviendha's hearing, and it hit Nynaeve like a blow to the stomach. Her eyes started half out of her head, and her mouth worked soundlessly. She appeared to recover quickly, though, as always. Um, I didn't really notice or think about this the first time I read through here, but that is not the kind of thing Lan would have said out loud not that long ago. That you on a reread, you start to see more and more the way Lan is changing because of Nynaeve. Especially once he joins her in Ibudar and starts to, and then after they get married, he's still Lan, but little things like this, that's just not something he would have said out loud in public that long ago.
And this, just to piss Scott off some more and piss you off some, this is why the show was so bad, because with the my nipples scene, this little burst of emotion, it's like nothing. This stoic burst of emotion, this like, if you die, I die. The most confessing of love he can do is nothing compared to screaming and wailing and grabbing your nipples.
And Nynaeve reacts, as Aviendha says, like she just got punched in the gut. And if you've ever been punched in the gut when you weren't expecting it, or had the wind knocked out of you just from a fall, you know the kind of physical, visceral reaction, pain that's going on there. And if you have screaming, nipple grabbing, then you've just neutered this scene. It doesn't have the impact.
I know I've told you, did I say it on here? My fix to that whole scene?
I don't think you said it here. I think you said it
yeah.
when we were talking last time I was down there.
Yeah, so in my rewatch, it starts correct. When he reaches down to put his hand, he puts his hand on Steppen's chest. Yeah, Steppen's chest. And at first his face goes hard, but Moiraine starts crying. And you see Nynaeve looking at Moiraine, and they should have left it at that. Because he could have stayed hard, but then Moiraine's tears start coming down, and you can
her
see
face remains the same, but you see the tears. So
yeah,
you would have
good. The emotion going through the bond, and so you would get two things. You would get Lan being Lan, as we know him, and you would get an idea of how powerful the water bond is. And that was the whole point of the end of that episode, was how powerful the water bond was. You could have put a little cherry on top right there and still kept to the character of Lan. And I think that just talking about it that way kind of put a little goosebumps down just imagining how it would have been if they had left it at that. But then they fucked the whole thing up to show that men can have emotions too, which you would have shown men can have emotions too, but they also know how to hold them back, because sometimes that's what men do.
That's what grown-ass fucking men do, to quote the drinker. I don't remember which episode it was, but go look up his Why Modern Movies Suck videos. And the one where he compares Wrath of Khan with Into Darkness, and the over-the-top emotion of Zachary Quinto's Spock versus Shatner and Nimoy in Spock's death scene. And but then tying it together, and I hadn't really thought of it in these terms, but it's not just the death scene, it's then when they have the funeral and they shoot Spock out of the torpedo, there's this one little moment where Shatner's voice cracks, and then he pulls it back together because he's a grown arse man, and he's a commander. He is an admiral. He is in charge of these people. He has to hold it together because he has to hold all these people together. So there's this one little moment where his voice cracks, and then he pulls it back in and finishes his.
But in this scene, you would have had the intermediary with Moiraine crying being the voice cracking.
Yep.
His face still stoic. But in like the Trigger guys do in their little bitter health ad. Do you ever want to talk to somebody, Konstantin, about your feelings? Real men don't have feelings. In Russia, you'd be killed for not being a man. Of course, he's got a higher pitched voice than me, but that's because I'm a man.
Yeah. That every time I hear that, I think of the little video with the two guys working out with a bear next to them.
That's the only channel I don't skip forward through their little in thing commercials, because they do
Yeah,
them as a comedy bit, and it's
yeah. Um, okay, where was it? Okay, so then I had to stop in the middle of that paragraph there because then the next part, look how much to your point about that scene, about how had they played it understated, it would have been so much more powerful. And you get that here because Jordan does several things all at once just in this one paragraph. And one of them is the one, look how much Lan has changed, because he just said that out loud. And Aviendha is even taken aback a little bit of, wow, I can't believe he said that out loud. And then also the impact that has on Nyneave. Um, interrupting her "I am woman, hear me" roarness, that is always amusing when she kind of gets put in her place there. But then notice uh Avienda recognizing what we, the reader, have been more or less privy to because we actually have seen inside her head, which is that let's see, pretending to resettle her blue-plumed hat, a ridiculous thing like a strange bird roosting atop her head, she sought a glance at him from beneath the wide brim. Avienda had begun to suspect that the other woman often used silence and supposedly significant looks to cover ignorance. She suspected Nynaeve knew little more about men, about dealing with one man, than she did herself. Facing them with knives and spears was much easier than loving one, much easier. How did women manage being married to them? Avienda had a desperate need to learn and no idea how. And that is that is something we've talked, especially you have talked a lot about, especially earlier on when we were talking a lot about Nynaeve and where she came from and why her book origin is so important and why it was so stupid that they changed it in the series. Because Nynaeve is the most masculine, even more so than like Aviendha, who was a maiden of the spear. Just in personality, Nynaeve is way more masculine. And so, to your point, way back whenever this may have been in a spoiler talk in the very first book of, it's not an accident that she ends up with the most masculine man.
sorry, people were yelling at each other up and down the stairs, so I muted myself.
So the Aviendha doesn't know why, but she is picking up on she doesn't actually know how to deal with men because it's not something she'd ever thought of before or had to do.
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily the parent dynamic at this point. It's the peer group dynamic and the fact that in the Two Rivers, you're basically betrothed. You don't really date around. You don't test it like we do in high school now. So she went through that phase where she was just supposed to never get married. So she just never even,
Be-
it was never a priority in her mind to learn this thing.
Because
Whereas
in
the
an
people that are,
apprenticeship
yeah,
society, you start young. I mean, remember, Perrin, I think around 13 or 14, was no
mhm.
longer living at home. He was living with the Luhans because he
Yeah.
had apprenticed to Master Luhan.
But look at the Egwene Rand situation. They were navigating each other from a young age, knowing that someday down the road, that's probably what's going to happen. Where Matt kind of avoided the situation, but he still tried to, flirt around and test the waters here and there. And he actually got decently good at testing those waters, as we see later with, the barmaids and etc. Perrin, not so much, but that's because he was stuck in a forge the whole time. We talk about parallels. Nynaeve in her
Yeah.
relationship ability is much like Perrin in his relationship ability.
Yes. And then you add on to that he ends up married to someone who comes from a very different culture as far as male and female roles and dynamics go.
But also someone who likes that about him.
Mhm.
She likes his naivety in
Yeah.
relationships. The
Yep.
only thing she didn't like about him was that he was a little bit submissive and Well, the wolf helped with that.
Yep, yep. All right. Uh, which is a wonder how he managed to get married so young and then accidentally kill his wife. But I digress.
Yeah.
I think that so much of the changes were dumb and unnecessary. That one annoyed me the most. I clearly, because Perrin is my favorite of the main characters, or at least was for a very long time. Uh, and that one was just inexplicably dumb and incredible and way more damaging than they even let on. It's not only was it dumb, but then they didn't even use it very well. So you never really got the impact. You just got melodrama stupidity.
I have a feeling they're going to do something stupid. Like every time he's about to go into that rage, they're going to flash back to that moment.
Probably. Probably. All right, moving along. I like the shift here from the seriousness of Nynaeve and Lan, and then you shift to Elaine and Birgit, and it's she gave a down. This is the bottom of page 42 in the paperback. She Birgit gave Elaine a wry grin and a shake of her head that swung a golden braid as long and thick as Nynaeve's dark one. I promise to your face, not behind your back, she said dryly. When you've learned a little more, I won't have to tell you about orders and Ice to die. Uh, okay. Um,
Yeah, except that she kind of already did that with her drunken night with Matt.
yes.
It wasn't promises, but it was implied, and then follow through with you need to do this.
Um, this is an interesting little note on page 44. So just a little bit after that. Teslyn, the red from the Tower embassy to Queen Tylan, comes up to them, and I did already tell Marilil, she said in a thick Ilianer accent, doobie doobie doo, but I may as well put your minds at rest also. Whatever mischief you do be about, Jolene and I will no interfere. I did see to that. Elida may never learn of it if you do have some care. Stop gaping at me like carp, children, she added with a grimace of distaste. Blah, 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 blah. So this is just a little snippet that has way more impact later.
I've been waiting to use this meme for another Teslyn scene. There do no be thinking it be like it do be, but it do. I was waiting for a good Bell Doman moment or a good Teslyn moment for this.
I haven't seen a Wheel of Time that good, Wheel of Time meme that good, and I don't know how long. But they do no be thinking it be like it do be, but it's do.
Oh yeah, since the prologue's all over the place, this is the perfect spot.
All right.
Oh.
All right. So moving along, let's see. Going, where is it that she sees? So she sees somebody creepy. That's, I think, at the end here. She sees somebody creepy after she makes the gateway, after everyone's going through.
It's right on the top of a wall, right?
Yeah, so somebody's watching her.
Page 65 for me.
Okay, so yeah, 61. So she she grabs one of the Atha'an one of the sea folk, and tells them that she can't just say flat out, um Tell Elaine, a face like smooth black stone tuned her. The woman somehow made full lips seem thin. Her eyes were black pebbles, flat and hard. What message could she send that would not bring down all the trouble she feared from them? Tell Elaine and Nynaeve to be wary. Tell them enemies always come when you least want them. You must say this to her without fail. Uh, and then the Windfinder nods and goes off. Uh, I like um I like that we get this right before we change um to Elaine's point of view. Um, because it's just kind of a pin in reminding us who Aviendha is, that this is a trained warrior. And she just saw someone who gave her the heebie-jeebies. So she's probably not wrong, even though she's a little bit unsure herself. And then in a few chapters, when we actually get the point of view of the person who was looking down on them, it's confirmed, oh yeah, that was someone who was really bad, watching them go. So you might want to trust her instincts there. Um, all right. And then it switches to Elaine's point of view. And of course, when they do go through, the sea folk hadn't told them, so uh, shenanigans ensue. Um, but actually, before that, the title, Unweaving. This is uh, this is uh, I've complained before about Jordan introducing new stuff way late in the series, but here we are about halfway through, and this is kind of a major thing. Um, that I feel like is a cool introduction, especially since the other girls, Egwene, Nynaeve, Elaine, all have talents with a capital T,
Mm-hmm.
and we haven't seen one from Aviendha yet. So it's cool that she also has one. That she has a knack for unweaving, which is apparently very dangerous. Um, and again, when when we get to the creepy person who was watching Aviendha, he's going to think that, like, in shock of, holy crap, I was standing right next to potential death because this savage just did something that's supposed to be impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a glimpse of that in Fires of Heaven when Rand blocked Aviendha's gateway. And Asmodine said he didn't know anyone, but I think he says like Demandred. I didn't think anybody but Demandred had the power to block a gateway. So this to me is kind of the other side of the coin of blocking a weave is unraveling a weave.
Well, but also that actually is really good. You bring that up because even if she doesn't say it in her head here, she would already inherently know what can be done to hold a gateway open because Rand did it to her. And no telling if this shadow spawn can do the
Mhm.
same thing.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. We get two new ability talent things. One is reading the residue. And we have seen that. I forgot that we had seen that from Rand as well, because that's how he follows both Asmodine when he is going off to um, Tauron Riyadh, but then also when he's chasing Ravine through the
Mm-hmm.
palace and through the world of dreams, and then again with Samuel just in the last book. So we have seen that before, but I don't think we've seen it as common knowledge. But Aviendha knows of this ability because there are those in the Wise Ones who can do it. So she unravels it so that they can't be followed. Um, I I like the kind of push and pull here in this chapter because the the Aes Sedai freak out when they watch what Aviendha is doing, um, because it's so potentially dangerous, um, and because of course she can't possibly do this. She's not even tower trained, and not only does she do it successfully, but she kind of puts them in their place of I know of someone who can read a residue, and I'm not going to take that chance because I saw someone who was a potential enemy and creeped me out. And I have this ability. I am confident in my ability to do this. I have been trained in this, you know. Whereas you Aes Sedai too often think something is impossible, so you don't even try. So I like how she puts them in her place there, and you do get a glimpse of that Aes Sedai arrogance of they just saw something impossible that they thought was impossible and then got told what for to find out that not only is it not impossible, but with amongst the Aiel, it is not common, but something that's not unknown. And yet it still can't crack that we're Aes Sedai and we know best. On the other hand, sometimes they do know best. Like when Elaine is playing around with the things from that stash and trying to sort through and figure out this is a Tyrant this is an Angreal, and this is just junk. So she's sorting through all that. And who is it? I think it's Van Deen. I can't ever keep them straight. Um, yeah, Van Deen. So Elaine gets all snooty. Elaine, I do know what I'm doing, Van Deen. I have made Terra Angreal after all. Nobody else living has done that. Um, And the older green nodded, flipping her reins idly against the palm of her riding glove, and then goes on this long paragraph of uh of explaining the last person to make a real study of a real business of studying Terra and Griel. She did it for over 40 years, almost from the time she reached the Shawl. She was careful too, so I was told. Then one day, Martine's maid found her unconscious on the floor of her sitting room, burnt out. Even in a conversational tone, those words were a sharp slap. Vandine's voice did not alter a hair, though. Her warder was dead from the shock. Not unusual in cases like that. When Martine came to 3 days later, she couldn't recall what she had been working with. She couldn't remember the preceding week at all. That was more than 25 years ago, and no one since has had the nerve to touch any of the Tara and Griel that were in her rooms. Um, she's not wrong. And Elaine has had some, you know, close calls, and is this is where Elaine's storyline starts to get annoying, is going to continue to have close calls because the Aes Sedai have been wrong, they're always wrong in her mind. And I know what I'm doing. And you have to temper that. I know what I'm doing, and yeah, there are new ways of doing things, and we're figuring things out that haven't been figured out in a while. But you can't just flush all that old wisdom down the toilet because it got there through hard experience, like the story Van Dien just relates. Um, okay, and then comes the unweaving. Um, where is it? So then uh the the next great oh no, because we get this first. All right, so page 80 on the paperback. So it's right before the break in the chapter where it switches to the person who was watching.
Okay.
Um,
So it's actually 81 in the
okay.
hardcover. So we're syncing up our menses here.
Um, uh, Aviendha merely nodded and scrambled clumsily into her saddle, showing a bit more grace than the sea folk. There was a man watching Elaine, and he was no servant. Looking Elaine right in the eye, she added, "He frightened me," an admission she likely would have made to no one else in the world. So that says not just something about Aviendha's uh, abilities to read people, especially dangerous people that I mentioned before, but right before we get to who that was watching, it also says something about his creepy, dangerous, evil nature. That he would exude that to not only from a distance at just a glance frighten Avienda, but so much so that she admits it out loud. Because even admitting it to near sister who she wants to be first sister, that's still a big admission, especially for her. Um, so there's a couple of fun things in this. So we get that it's Moridin uh, right off the bat, so we know who it is. And I like his thoughts about Samael here as he's watching them leave from the palace. Samael was a fool to have risked so much to seize a collection of no one knew what. But then Samael had never been half as clever as he thought. Uh, he himself would not disrupt his own plans merely on the off chance to see what scraps of civilization he could find. And he's it, it's that comment is doubly interesting to me because um that says a lot about Samuel's arrogance because Moridin knows what Samuel just did, that he was clever enough to dupe Grendel.
Mm-hmm.
And she is one of the master manipulators. Um and he managed to dupe her, but his own uh overconfidence in his cleverness is what did end up leading to his downfall as well. That he thought he had everything figured out and everything planned, and then he got whacked.
In Samuel's defense, he had Rand dead to rights if Moore didn't show up. So that there is that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Morden's little he's not as clever as he thinks because he didn't expect me to help him. In fact, he
Yeah,
thought I was dead.
yeah. At that point, Morden. I don't think Morden had revealed himself to anyone but the
Uh
two who's
Mohidian and Sindane.
yeah, that
Yeah.
that we saw that the Korsava or whatever. We saw that in that little scene, and it,
your best army of darkness.
exactly. So then uh somebody comes in, is reporting, Morden doesn't care. Um Cold and what actually grabs his attention is, so at the bottom of 81 in the paperback, the gateway was like shimmered and disappeared, and he's looking at it going, what in the world was that? Nothing could make a gateway behave that way unless, could she actually have unraveled the web? Death held no fear for him. Coldly, he considered the possibility that he had been within sight of an unraveling web, one that had been unmade successfully. Another impossibility casually offered up by these um, so-called Aiel, these savages, whatever. We know his thought of, and and this is where Moridin is unique amongst the Forsaken, that yeah, he's got a healthy dose of arrogance like them all, but he also is willing to accept that there are other people who are competent too.
Mm-hmm.
That you can be fully confident in how great and powerful and clever you are, but if Samuel's problem wasn't exactly the way Morden framed it. It wasn't that he wasn't as half as clever as he thought he was. It was that he didn't think anyone else was nearly as clever as he was. And that's what ultimately led to him getting whacked. Was underestimating everyone else, whereas Moridin is willing to coldly calculate. I just saw an impossibility, another impossibility from these savages, these uncivilized people uh, uh, who look at what we had as modern conveniences that we took for granted, and they look at it as astounding folklore, myth, magic. But he's perfectly understands that this can't happen, and so I better be. That's why he is where he is, because he's willing to calculate and accept that. Um, I like that. I like what makes him mad here. Uh, he was standing next to an unraveling gateway,
Mm-hmm.
and as he thinks death holds no fear for him, so he's just coldly calculating what he just saw. Uh, and it's an impossibility that he now has to factor in making his plans, that somebody amongst these savages knows how to do something that very few people, that no one alive here should be able to do, just maybe a few of us Forsaken. So he's got to calculate that in. It's, oh, she could have screwed it up and killed us all. So, but he's just cold calculation. But then when Matic mentions the Bowl of the Winds, and did these darn hayseeds find something that can disrupt my master's plans? And he
Mm-hmm.
flies into a rage. He loses that cool that you saw in the prologue, that simmering anger and hatred as beneath the surface, the facade of his calculation, as he's sitting there looking at the board, the game board. And now you see it actually bubble up, and he's got to release this rage, and he just turns this, poor evil schmuck into a bubbling pile of goo. The other interesting thing here, as this chapter ends, these last couple of paragraphs, is that there was something watching Moridin that he didn't even know about. So Aviendha saw Moridin and it creeped him out. And yet the golem is able to sit here in the shadows and watch Moridin without being detected. So apparently even the true power wouldn't help you against a golem, which is super creepy. Because other creatures of the dark you can sense if you're a power user.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy you can't.
I don't know. This is one of the, I would think of it as kind of a plot hole, because yes, you've got the medallion able to harm him, but realistically, nothing else in this world. He's a little bit OP to have done so little, realistically.
Um,
They had to show what holds his hand, and they really didn't. It was just like, oh, I got vengeance for Matt. But I
the
mean,
next time he shows up, you get a little bit of it, of why is he not just going off on a murder spree, killing everybody? Because
because
he's unstoppable.
he could have been in the tower and just taken the whole damn thing out.
Mm-hmm. One does wonder why. Um, I mean, they were made as the perfect assassin to kill power users, and why weren't they used more to do that? Now you know that the Dark One has this master plan, that it's more important to him that he turns Rand. So that's going to stay his hand to some degree, but we'll get into it in spoilers. There's a lot about the Golem that makes me go, is that a plot hole, or am I missing something? What's going on here?
Well, it
All
just
right.
seemed like this was one of the things that that Jordan did use to kind of just keep the story going.
Yes.
And
Um, all right.
We're right at about an hour if you're tracking time.
Um, let's go ahead and stop there because we have quite a few spoilery things that we'd
Yeah, I've got
mentioned,
3 notes and I didn't even
and
write down the golems. So
there's a really fun interaction here with Aviendha and the girls, that you might want to spend some more time on with some good quality girl talk, and then we can kind of zip through the end of this section of the girls. All right. So let me,
if you're reading for the first time, spoilers,
yes, go away.
go away.
Um, where, uh, I'm trying to, I didn't pull up the last video before.
Me neither.
Here we go.
Should be 3 comments.
The light saved by arrogance. Yes, yes, it was.
Well, I think that's one of we see that in a lot of film genres, though, or story genres, where the evil tends to be arrogant because that's considered a negative flaw.
Mm-hmm.
And when we divide light and dark and good and evil, we're really dividing good, virtuous attributes and negative, antisocial attributes.
Mm-hmm.
And too much arrogance is it's typically considered in that antisocial kind of
All right. So I've got the,
okay, so I got the comments.
oh, I had never thought of that. That is
Which
a good point.
which one?
Why didn't I see the one
Walreign's.
about time? No.
Oh,
Yeah, unless you assume that he was lying. That's a good point.
oh, wow. Yeah.
I don't remember ever seeing anyone bring that up before back in the day when we were going round and round about that, but unless you assume he was lying, it
Yeah, it
says
could have
on
been.
multiple occasions
I
that
think I'm wanting to say I've seen something, but someone said it was a smoke screen, kind of.
yeah, yeah. So you would have to do the typical conspiracy theorist, well, the lack of evidence just proves me right, kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing, and say,
No,
well,
it's
it's
the
smoke.
critical theories.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is said on a number of occasions that he and Lews Therin were like the top swordsmen or two of the top swordsmen in the Age of Legends.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Um,
yeah, because he was second best. He was always perpetual silver medal.
mhm.
That I mean, that was his dark friend motivation. Was he's Mr. Silver Medal and he never could be the best. That's why I made him Chell Sonnen.
Yeah. Um, I like so the Moraine comment is true, and it it uh it really encapsulates the kind of the worldview here and what makes um fantasy stories so engaging is because we can talk about the end of the world. How many jokes and memes have there been about how this apocalypse sucks through the last 2 or 3 years? Um, but it's still a notion. It's still a
Mm-hmm.
vague idea. Whereas in this world, you have a concrete because you know uh what the foretelling is, you know what the prophecies are, and you have undoubtedly seen some come true. So this isn't just, this isn't like Nostradamus and his funky poetry. This is no, we can test these. We have foretellings, we have prophecies, and we have seen where they have come true. We know this is going to happen. This is not an abstract. As Scott said, this is something concrete. And so now, what's the point of keeping this a secret? Because this means the Ragnarok is here and it is going to happen in our lifetimes. So you'd better put on your big boy pants.
Yeah, my only thing about that comment is it's something that's going to happen in their lifetimes. There's a lot of things that could happen to you before that boy grows up because y'all are running around, in the borderlands and chasing dark friends
Well,
and
I think that's why, and you kind of get that from her point of view there at the in the epilogue, is that's why she lays it all out, because we have got to go into the both of us need to go into this with eyes open, fully cognizant of the importance of what we're doing and therefore the dangers and pitfalls of what we're doing.
Kind of the we won't make it to the end, but the end is nigh
Hmm.
situation.
And
If we go and do nothing, we will live to see the end of the world, kind of thing. Let's see.
yeah.
A Memory of Light makes me sad. I just wish we could have read what Jordan would have done with it. I don't
Hmm.
think Sanderson's style worked well here. And this is just like, see, the way I'm looking at this now, Sanderson's not this bad, but this brings the point home. Look at what Amazon is doing with material that's already written. Now you've got somebody coming in with just notes to write the end of something, and we don't know what this person's agenda was. Was it to make it his own, or was it to complete the work? And the way it turned out, I don't think it was to complete the work. I don't know. It just seems like that to me. I think it was to take the work and make it his own to come to an ending.
Yeah, yeah, and the he and Harriet were both a little cagey, I think, and probably purposely so, because they probably didn't want people nitpicking too much. But we
What's
know
the timeline there? When did he take over?
it was announced, I believe, a few months after after
Year
Jordan's
wise.
death, and I can't remember what year he
Let me
died.
see when the first Sanderson one was published.
Yeah, but I know he was working on it um for a while. Uh, let's see. He died in 2007. Okay. So it would have been announced shortly after that. Um, all right. So
Oh, you. This is also the worst cover art of them all right here.
yeah, yeah, that one was pretty bad.
His hands are so tiny.
Yeah. Um, so Harriet and Sanderson had both said that there were things that he had to fill in the gaps. So there were a lot of notes and there were sections that had been written, but those sections were all in various stages of completion. So some were very rough drafts, some were medium rough drafts, and some were mostly complete and had been, edited and fine-tuned. Um, but there was some stuff that he would have had to invent. And we don't know because we've never seen them. We've just heard about the ludicrous amount of notes. We don't know how he took notes. So we don't know how much detail there was. Was this like a Cliff's Notes? Was this like a Wikipedia entry that was somewhat in depth? Was it like an outline? So we know he had to fill in a bunch of gaps.
So, in our other episodes, what years ish do I talk about how things started becoming more and more and more idealistically progressive?
I want to say 2012 is when,
I go back a little further,
or was
about
it
2010.
2010? I assume you're talking about the quick that spike in language being used in the major media
Mm-hmm.
of yeah.
But it really started to become a mainstream thing before that, and it kind of just started building and building and building and building. Yeah, 2009. And I've talked about how Sanderson is quite a bit more progressive in his writing than Jordan was.
Mhm.
So I think he's of that generation that probably went to. Does he have a degree in literature or something along those lines?
I'm not sure about his background, but
Let's see. Does it have a little
it
bio on him?
it would have. I know that Jordan and he talked before
Yeah,
Jordan's death.
he has to have a degree because he teaches literature
Mm.
and
So
creative writing.
Jordan died in 2007, and so Sanderson would have come in sometime before then. I don't know if we have a definitive date on that, but then that influence was only going to get worse. And how many times have we have we opened up with, and this is why Jordan is problematic and needs to be canceled, and why we're going to get
Mm-hmm.
canceled.
And I bet you we say that a lot less when we do Sanderson stuff.
Yeah, Uh, especially the things that annoy us the most, like Elaine and Egwene's storylines, because the reason Nynaeve is so good is because she was a strong woman. She was powerful, but she was also flawed, and she got put in her place more than once, which is how she grew
Including
to
to
become
open up
even
this
stronger.
this episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Lan has to put her in her place, kind of, but he does it in his own way. Um, we
Well,
saw it.
you know what? We'll be fair and progressive in the 1990s progressive sense. He gets put in his place too because sometimes he's over stoic and sometimes he's
Hmm.
over
Hmm.
macho, and he misses the point because of his duty is tougher, is heavier than the mountain. Sometimes he misses the point too,
Yep.
and that's why they're such a good kind of duo,
Yes.
because she's able to put him in his place when he needs it, and he respects that about her. That's the key. It's not that she's boss bitch. It's that she does it in a way where it actually gets through to him and he respects
Mm.
it. And then he makes a statement like he does at the beginning of this book that puts her in her place in front of everybody. But then she can't help but respect that.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's
It's almost like in a sexually reproducing species, you need both to get by.
almost
Yeah,
like maybe.
almost like.
Curious. Um, but it, I don't know if people who came to the series later, and I'm curious, I don't remember, Scott, if you said when you started reading these, but
He's an
I'm
OG.
okay. So I'm
Yeah.
curious about people who come to the series later and read through
Which is funny
like
because I think Scott
binge
and I would
books.
consider you as someone who came into it later.
Yeah, true.
And it
Because
was
I
what, 1999, somewhere around there, 98, 99.
98 because y'all
Yeah.
dorks were talking about it in the lobby of Park, and I said, "What are you talking about?" And so then it sounded cool, so I went and I got the first one, and then I very quickly had to get all of them and binge through them. But uh, a lot of the talk about Nynaeve early on was about how annoying she was, and yet she eventually becomes a fan favorite. And it's not an accident that
Well,
that happens
I will
and
say that that might
stuff
be
she
an
has to go
age
through
thing, because I thought she was annoying when I was a teenager reading these things.
because she was a mid late 20s boss bitch. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but because I'm an adult reading this and I'm seeing the nuances of relationships and appreciating what an actual strong woman is versus what TV
Hmm.
tells you a strong woman is, I can appreciate her now. So this is why, again, you read something later in life because you have a new perspective on things. We're looking at some things as if we're dads because we're dads now. We weren't dads when we read it the first time. We're looking at some things because we've been in relationships for quite some time now.
Hmm.
You know, I've been in both a lot of short-term relationships and then 15 years with my wife, right? It's it's a new perspective for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I lost my train of thought there.
Later people came into it later.
Oh no, yeah, that was it of if 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 new readers how they feel about Nynaeve, if she's annoying or if being able to
I bet you
binge through
she's not
them.
boss enough.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna go back into the woke Wheel of Time reviews and see what. Just specifically look for Nynaeve stuff.
I haven't done that because I value my what little sanity I have remaining.
Well,
Ooh.
this is where humor comes in because what gets me through studying these kids and their ethnographies and their social studies degrees uh is it makes me laugh now because I'm reading it, and I just the quote that goes through my head when I'm reading it is Gad Sad's quote: "It takes an intellectual to make something this stupid."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
also Jordan Peterson's work on left-wing authoritarianism and the attributes that are commonly correlated with it, and one of them was low IQ. Low IQ, sorry, YouTube, female, and there were some other ones, but
No, that's interesting. I've had this thought, and I don't think I've said it out loud when I've referenced crap. There was a was it I can't remember the name of it because there's one that was good and one that was terrible. A documentary on Hitler on Netflix, and it wasn't about just him. It was about his inner circle and where they came from and how they came together. And one of the astounding things about it is how many of them were losers, how many of them were failures until they glommed on to this authoritarianism and were able to make that work for them.
Okay, let's make a whole episode out of this, but let me just kind of expound upon some of their thoughts on this because of my thinking about what I'm going into in the next 5 years of my life. A quote from Brett Weidenstein like 3 years ago that he said about STEM versus the social sciences and stuff. And he was talking about real science versus the social sciences. And he said anybody's got a social science degree is someone who didn't have the chops to get a real scientific degree. But now I'm about to go into one of the wokest departments you can go into college, which is psychology,
Mhm.
ology being science, right? It's extremely woke because somewhere along the line, administrators started taking over the leadership of the sciences, the bureaucracy of the sciences,
Mhm.
and they started converting those departments to be the thing that these midwits could get into instead of you actually having the chops to do the real work.
And I'm sure it had nothing to do with all the free money the government was giving away so that they could get more people enrolled into their universities so
Well,
they
and
could get
also
more money.
universities are businesses. They have CEI scores, they have ESG scores, they have all of
Mhm.
that as well. And so they again, back to our thoughts on we're actually living in a fascist state. If you don't have a high CEI score, you cannot access any funding from the central bank. That's not government corporate collusion.
All right,
Okay,
back to our
Varen.
spoilers.
Varen is the first one. You said my thing on that was you it was this you always knew, but as you pointed out, there's no evidence.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
knew what the plot line was going to be there. And this is one where a lot of people would say bad writing, but I think it's good writing because you knew it, but you couldn't prove it.
Mm. Well, so much so that I don't know how much of it is still around, but primarily because of Varen is where the theory of the purple Ajah comes
Yeah, I was
from.
going to bring that up next.
It's
Yeah.
primarily because of Varen, because
But the problem with that theory,
she's
that hypothesis was there was no one else you could put in
exactly,
it.
which which makes perfect sense when you get to the end and go, oh, that's why. That
Mm-hmm.
that's that's why she was doing what she was doing and why she had to do it the way she did it. Um,
She
but it,
she was she was the mole
mhm, yeah,
on
uh,
both sides. She was Varen.
yeah, I love her arc as one of the minor characters of because it's um I, I think I think she works so much better than a lot of the others because you get enough of her to keep you interested in her. Um, and it's not so long between seeing her that you kind of forget about her, like some of the other more minor characters that you'll have long droughts where it's like, what happened to that person? Like you know brought up today, Bale Doman Doobie Doobie Doo,
Mm-hmm.
who is like periodic, like, oh, he's here and now he's gone for a long
Yeah,
time. Oh,
except
he's
he
here
gets
again. Now
annoying
he's
here
gone
the
for a long
next time
time.
we find him.
And then he shows back up and he becomes a more major player who's like always there with Matt, and it it doesn't work as well. He kind of loses his charm a little bit
It will
because of
be
that.
because he Gawins it.
Um,
Keterin's escape.
yeah. Ha do we know yet that she's black? Because I know we eventually find out that she is, but I can't remember when we find out that she is.
I thought we knew, but let's treat it as a spoiler for now. And Scott, if you remember, if we've already gone over that,
Hmm.
then yeah.
Because I feel like that should have been a a major um a major point of evidence of what Varen is doing. The fact that because this is way beyond she's red, because not only that, and I hadn't really noticed it until this time, is when the maiden tells Varen how she got away, it's three people were murdered. That doesn't sound like red. That sounds like black.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's. I think at this point, if we didn't know officially, you have to know
Hmm.
because even a red wouldn't have people murdered to have her escape.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and the fact that she, you don't get confirmation in her own mind, but she's so careful through that scene. She's so careful. She's so cagey. She's so reserved. She plays dumb and innocent sometimes. Like when the Maureen, I think it is, the wise one grabs her notebook and it's just doodles of flowers and stuff. And it's, oh, I just like to draw things and write whatever pops into my head. And then she's thinking, at some point, I got to write down the cipher that I use because this is not doodles of flowers and plants and random thoughts. This is not deep thoughts. Deep thoughts.
With
Um,
Jack Handy.
yep. So she's being so careful, and then she just loses it very uncharacteristically. So I suspect that was purposely a point of yeah, she knows that Catherine is black, which for her to be that certain of it is a big clue about what's going on there. Um,
See, I
I'm looking at
I
her
wrote a
wiki entry and I don't see it I don't see it anywhere where it says that she is where it says that she's black.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so I'll have to
Amazon's making the show, so she's probably black. Oh no, wait, she's a
probably.
bad guy, so she's probably white.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, clearly. All
Except they
right.
made Valda black. And actually, I don't mind him. Oh, he tends to overact a little bit. I did not mind him in the show,
Yeah,
especially in that opening scene. It kind of gave you that kind of creepy, yeah, vibe.
kind of Hannibal Lecterish.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I wrote on a question for you because we know Elaine and Aviendha go through the ritual to become first
Hmm.
sisters, but did they actually marry Rand or not? I can't remember.
No, no, I don't think they
Oh,
ever do.
okay. Because that made me think of it because her thinking about how brave Aviendha was and da 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 da. And I'm like, dang it, if they should have fought. Because remember, we got into the inside of that culture with Bale's wedding.
Yeah.
I'm like,
How'd
oh,
that
we
wedding
needed
go?
Aviendha and Elaine to fight hand-to-hand combat. And
Yeah.
Min to come in as the third party that like the old Royal Rumble where the person that hates both of them comes in with a chair and just that's in the deleted scenes.
No, I
Amazon,
want
I am requesting this in the deleted scenes that we have a marriage
yeah,
fight and then
adding
men
so
come
much
in the
other
middle.
nonsense. Sure, why
Yeah.
not? Yeah. Now I have the urge to go
It
watch
would
some
still be
classic
closer to the source
WWF.
material than what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, no, they consummate the relationship, but after they bond each other, but they don't have any sort of marriage ceremony. Was there another spoiler thing?
You brought up more something with Moridin?
No, the Golem.
The Golem, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the constraining thing there, and I don't know if we ever told this or if it just alludes to this, but they're so terrifyingly powerful that somehow they have hard coded in them, kind of like the three rules for robots from Asimov. There's like hard coded into every robot so that they can't kill a human. So it's impossible for a robot to kill a human. I think that they somehow did that with the Golem because
Except he killed willy-nilly when he needs to.
if he can kill to feed, if it doesn't interfere with his goal. So it's he says that somewhere. Or maybe it's when Matt is explaining things, explaining how Golem work, that they have to follow the orders of the Forsaken. And so I think the main thing that is constraining this Golem is that it's under Samael's orders and Samael's not there anymore. So it's kind of has to follow its last order until someone else can come and give it orders.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I missed that. So that helps. But what happens when there's no Forsaken?
It somehow it
Or
lives off of
a
blood
new Forsaken is made. How does he know? Like
because it,
Tame was made
yeah,
Forsaken later.
good
You know.
question. Good question. Well, the Dark One does mark them somehow. So maybe that's how it can tell when someone is a Forsaken, because the Dark One does mark them somehow.
Hmm. So
Um
is Moridin marked? I'm assuming.
uh yeah, he must be, because remember, now she's not like a full-on Forsaken, but remember, oh, I just brain farted. Elida's keeper, the white,
Uh uh
the white who's actually black.
Alviren.
Alvieren. Remember, Shidar Heron shows up and marks her, and she's like, she keeps touching herself because she just instinctively, reflexively feels like this must be visible. People are gonna know that I'm a dark friend. But Shidar Heron says, I'm gonna mark you so that creatures of mine, followers of mine, will know that you belong to me. So even the Forsaken must somehow be able to detect that marking, whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
to know this person is under the protection of the Dark One itself. So don't mess with her.
Mm.
So somehow he's able to extend his power and essence out there somehow. All right. Did we have any other spoilery things? I thought we had several that had popped up.
Yeah, I had the three that I asked, and you had the
Okay.
Golem.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else. So
No, I think that was it. When is it definitive that Moridin is Ishi? I mean, I always felt like it was pretty obvious, but
yeah, it
I
was
don't know
always
if it's
pretty
obvious to
obvious, but
others.
what we might have seen it when he talks to Sindane, maybe.
Okay.
We might have seen it, but I don't know. I can't tell you. But yeah,
Um,
for those that didn't know, he's Ishi.
because yeah, I do know one of the Forsaken is from their point of view at some point. Um, and I want to say it's in the prologue of the next book. I want to say it's in prologue of Winter's Heart, is thinking about how he was always crazy, even in the Age of Legends. And I don't think it outright says that he's a Shamil, but it as good as outright says, because the Forsaken is, you're even crazier than you used to be, and you were always crazy.
Mm.
So I think that may be in the prologue of the next book. Um, when is Okay, so we don't get Sindane yet. Her first appearance is in chapter 12.
Oh, okay. So I thought that's where it was.
Okay.
Uh,
So
I
so we'll
may
see
stand
that
to be corrected in
we'll see
probably
that
our next
soonish.
episode. Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I got. If that's all you got.
that's all I got. Going forward, what are we going to talk about on Tuesday?
Well, we can go back into the Durham report if you want. It's awful if we want to
Well,
keep
yeah,
doing that.
we gotta close that out at some point, some way, somehow.
And it is probably even more relevant now with the second indictment. So,
Well, and it's also probably more relevant with even things that are going on in the media, with like that Fox News producer getting fired for calling our commander in chief a dictator. And realistically, but that was in response to his elated speech about Trump being indicted. And I don't know. It's this is a tough one for us all because, yeah, Heath got me to watch it, and I'll pimp it out to everybody else as well. The Becoming a Tyrant series. It tried to, because it's, I mean, obviously producers are left leaning. It tried to make you think Trump was all of these things, but they're all
Yeah.
happening right now.
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
happening right now.
Yes. There were a lot of not so subtle pictures of Trump.
Yeah, yeah, that would come in every time some new subject came up. But they're all happening right now. And here's the great thing. The US Constitution was designed to prevent a Trump from being a dictator, but it wasn't designed to prevent what we have going on now, which is the uniparty plus the corporate collusion with the government. And
Yep.
we can stop it because we still have votes, but we also have to have voices and things like that. So
Yeah, it's going to be another fun one. Well, let's try and between now and then, let's try and think of something fun to end it on because, boy,
well, I can always do sexy time or workout time or both at once. I don't know.
hey, hey.
Hey, hey, not that kind of gym. Not before 8.
All right. We'll see you then.
Later, guys.